Hello everyone and welcome to the Gymkana demonstration. My name is Ed Schaefer and I will show you some of the basic functions of the Gymkana machine. One of my favorite things about the Gymkana is its ease of use, and hopefully I can demonstrate how easy to use. It is also pretty people-proof, and I will just kind of give a refresher on some of those functions that people do have with the machine. But first things first, I just want to touch briefly. When you first get the Gymkana 994, you will have an activation pin that you'll have to enter. You'll have a code that you can scan on the front of the box. I do want to point out though that if that code does not work, depending on phones and networks, you can always log on to keyline-usa.com, and it's the touchscreen serial number on the back of the touchscreen that gives you the activation pin. There's two serial numbers on the machine. There's one on the back of the touchscreen and there's one on the left-hand side of the machine. You're technically supposed to do both when you register the machine, but the touchscreen serial number is what gives you the activation pin. Now, after you activate the activation pin, you will have this lovely screen that has administrator and user on it. This is great if you have a lot of people using the machine. Administrator does all the functions such as updating, calibration, user function. So let's say you have 5 employees using the machine. You can create a profile for each employee that will only be able to cut and decode keys. They won't be able to update, calibrate. That's solely specific for administrator. You can also see what keys they were cutting, what time they were using the machine. They all can have their own separate passwords. It's a great feature to have, but 9 times out of 10, most people like to just use the administrator function. When you select administrator, you will see a password screen. If you would like to change your password, you can. But when you first get the machine, there is no password. It's kind of a trick. You just log in using an empty password. So here is your main menu. Your main menu has a bunch of features on it. First and foremost, you'll see your software version at the top left corner of your screen. I get a lot of calls about that, but that is where it's located at. We also have favorites, which is favorite type of vehicles. I'll show you how to add that, but let's say you do a lot of Hondas, a lot of Toyotas, or you do a lot of residential keys of a specific cylinder. You can add that to favorites so you don't have to keep searching for it every time. You have your vehicle option, which you can search by vehicle. I really enjoy that one. We also have a series option. If you know the code of the vehicle that you are cutting, you can go to series, type in the code, and it brings it up right away. I'll show you how to do that later, but I'm just pointing it out from the main menu perspective. You also have key blanks. You can search by key blanks if you know the key blank. Key blanks is great. The problem with key blanks, though, is it gives you so many options. I like to kind of condense down my search a little bit more by searching under vehicle or cylinder to kind of get the right code series I'm looking for. We also have archive. Look up archive. Setup, search, and personal computer. Search just gives you a broader aspect of different things you can search for, like the cylinders I mentioned earlier. You got serial number, that's our personal serial number, code series, card, cylinders, vehicles, motorbike, which I know a lot of you like to look up motorcycle keys. You can do it on this machine. You just have to search and go under motorbike. Key blanks and advanced search. 9 times out of 10, you will search by either code or by vehicles. I'm just giving you the options of other ways you can look that up. So if we go to setup, we got a couple of different cool other features we have here. This is where we have the calibration screen. Diagnosis, if we want to do some machine testing, like let's say the cutter motor, or making sure the machine's at the home position. This is where we would go for that. Updates. We will do a separate video in the future on how to update the machine. I'm just showing you today how to work and do the basic processes of the Gymkana. We also have parameters, which is registration, a couple different variations, but if you have problems with that, always give me a call at our tech support number, 1-800-891-2118, and I'll be able to walk you through any sort of feature or issue that you may have. We also have a utility function. Users, which changes the user, like how many users you want, changes the password at the first screen that appeared at the beginning of the video. We also have default. Default, if you press that, all it does is it's the measurements default to metric or inch millimeters. We always change them to inch millimeters before we send them out. Also, North America setting, because we are in North America. So if we go to utility, we got a couple other different features that are very, very good to know. We have key history. So let's say that you cut a key a couple days ago. You want to cut that same exact key again. You can go to key history, scroll down to the date, select it, and hit next. And it'll bring up that key that you can cut right away, and you don't have to re-decode it or retype in the code. It's right there in our system. We also have replace cutter, replace tracer. The cool part about the Gymkana is you shouldn't have to press those features. For the cutter, you just push it up as far as it can go and lock it down. For the tracer, if you replace the tracer, you should do a calibration, which I will show you in a minute. We also have statistics, so you can see how many keys you cut, how many keys you cut on a specific jaw. You also have how many codes you've decoded and how many times you've turned on the machine. Just nice statistics to have. So now I will show you how to do a calibration. With the Gymkana, it's good to know how to do a calibration. You shouldn't have to do it all the time. However, you should do it, I would say, about once a month just to be safe. If you ever get an error message that says invalid jaw, it means that the tracer is either touching or not touching the jaw where it's supposed to. So it's having trouble recognizing the jaw, and 9 times out of 10, it just means that this tracer knob right here is shifted. So if you do a calibration, it will fix the issue. We also have a sticker right here that says do not touch the tracer knob. The reason why we have that sticker there is because when these machines first came out, the very first thing people would do would be to touch the tracer knob. So unless you're calibrating, don't touch the knob. But if you'd like to calibrate, make sure you're logged in as administrator, and then you go to Setup, Calibrations, and you'll see we have a couple different options here. A full calibration is tracer setup, tracer adjustment, and then a jaw setup. Tracer setup measures the distance between the tracer and the cutter. Tracer adjustment adjusts the tracer knob so it's at the right height, and then jaw setup calibrates the entire machine to the key inside the jaw. So I will demonstrate a full calibration on the Gymkana. First thing that we always do when we calibrate is we take out the tracer and verify that it's completely straight. How you take out the tracer is you loosen the set screw on the right hand side, and the tracer will just come right out. I'm not going to pull it out just to be safe, but you just need to make sure that it's completely 100% straight. Make sure that it's a T008, and then push it up as far as it can go. Next step you do is you loosen the tracer knob, drop it all the way down, and then lock it in position. That's the only time that we're going to ever touch that knob is during a tracer setup and a tracer adjustment. After that, you do a cutter, or you gotta remove the cutter. You just loosen the set screw above it, and you take out the cutter. Where is the T00 tracer? Okay. Okay. Now, usually to do a tracer setup, we install the T00 tracer on the left-hand side, but it appears that we are missing one. But the next step you would do is you would grab a calibration template, which is the silver metal rectangle with a key ring through it, and it's got bumpers. It's got bumpers on the back of the tracer or the calibration template. That stops it automatically when you push it into the jaw, so it's at the right position. So when you install it, you push it into the U-jaw as far as it can go. And then you tighten down the calibration template. When you tighten it down, it should automatically center it in the U-jaw, so you don't even have to worry about that. You just push it in until it hits the stoppers, and then you're good to go. Since I'm having trouble finding my T00 tracer, I'm just going to continue on and do a tracer adjustment and then a jaw setup. So to do a tracer adjustment, you just loosen the tracer knob, lift it up and put it to the right so it's out of the way, and then close the shield, and you hit... Oh, you found it! Thank you! So you got moved. So let me go back. I'm going to backtrack. Drop the tracer knob all the way down, lock it. And then T00 tracer, you also have to make sure that this guy is 100% straight before you install it. 99% of the time it will be. It's still good to double check though. And then you put it up in the cutting shaft as far as it can go and lock it down. And then you go to tracer setup. Tracer setup. Always note your X and Y values before you start. On this machine, it's 1 and 10. So you hit start. And since I did all these steps, it reminds you to do them again. Please lower the tracer and lock it in position. We already did that with the tracer knob. Please remove the cutter. The cutter is already removed. Install the T00 tracer into the cutter spindle. The T00 tracer only goes into the cutting spindle. It never goes into the tracer shaft, which is on the right-hand side. It always goes here. And if you leave the shield open and you press OK, the machine will tell you to close the shield. So always have that shield closed. If you're never using it, it'll save you some hassle. And then you hit OK. Please lift the tracer. So what you do is you open the shield, loosen the tracer knob, lift it up and put it to the right so it's out of the way, and then you close the shield and press OK. And once it's done, calibration complete, please press save to apply the new values. You hit OK, and then your values will always change because it's calibrated to 1/100ths of a millimeter. I have seen it where it doesn't change before, but usually it will change. This changed a little bit, and X went from 1 to 0, and our Y went from 10 to 5. So you're going to hit save, hit yes, and tracer setup is calibrated if it's within plus or minus 2 of your previous calibrations. So our X was okay, our Y was not. It went from 10 to 5, which is a differential of 5 instead of 2. So to be safe, I'm going to drop the tracer knob down, lock it in position. I'm going to run it one more time after I save. That time I only needed to press it once because it knew that the T00 tracer was already installed in the cutting shaft. It goes off of the last prompt. It doesn't have like a sensor in the shafts. So the last prompts that it has will always refer to what's in there. Please lift the tracer, open the shield, lefty-loosey, lift it up and put it to the right so it's out of the way, and then close the shield and press OK. Calibration complete. Please press save to apply to new values. Hit OK. Hit save on the right. I always save right after a calibration just because it's a very good habit to have. And then you hit yes. And then look at our values now. X is 0. That's a change of 0, so the X is calibrated. The Y went to 5 to 6, which is a differential of 1, which is within the plus or minus 2 of the previous calibration. So our Y is now saved. So our tracer setup is now complete. It is calibrated between, the distance between the tracer and the cutter has now been calibrated. Next step is we need to do a tracer adjustment. To do that, first things first, we take out the T00. And I always like to put it safely back in the toolkit so you didn't have the problem I had earlier, which is where I couldn't find it. So we put the T00 back, and then you grab your cutter. I always make sure that one, the cutter's not chipped. You should have two points at the end of your cutter. I always double check to make sure that you use the V037 cutter. That's one of our cutters. That way I know that it will be calibrated correctly. We do have a couple different other cutters, but I'll get into that a little later in the video. But the next step we need to do is we need to install that cutter. And all you have to do, it's the easiest thing in the world, you just push it up as far as it can go, and you tighten down the set screw. Close the shield, and then you hit back, and then tracer adjustment. Hit start, and then I'll go through the processes I just showed you, but I'll say, please remove the tracer T00 from the cutter spindle, which we just did. And then please install cutter V037. You hit OK. All right, now it says, please lower the tracer and lock it in position. Easiest thing in the world, you open it up, you drop the tracer knob down so it lands on top of the calibration template, and then you righty-tighty that knob. Once it's locked, you just close the shield, and you press OK. Procedure successfully completed. Our tracer knob is now at the right height, and we shouldn't have to touch it. Now, the important part, we hit OK, hit back, and now we do a jaw setup. This tells the machine where the key is relative to the jaw. So, you hit jaw setup, and we have a list of several different jaws that you can calibrate. U-jaw is what comes standard with the machine. The U-jaw, 95% of automotive keys can be cut on the U-jaw without changing out the cutter. We do have a 1.5 millimeter cutter, and that's for newer style Ford keys. They also need it for the V-jaw, V as in Victor. The V-jaw cuts the new four-sided keys and also does Volkswagen keys. But this is the V-jaw. You can get it with or without the 1.5 millimeter cutter, but I recommend that you get it with the 1.5 millimeter cutter if you do not have one already. We also have an H-jaw, which a lot of you, if you've had our machines before, you're familiar with this one. This does 6-cut Tibby keys. We also have the J-jaw, which some of you have asked previously over the years, and we finally got it, 8-cut Tibby keys. And we also have the M-jaw, M as in Mike. The M-jaw does residential keys and it does VATS keys. It comes with it comes with an AB adapter, but you can also get it with an SV-DV adapter. The AB adapter does residential keys, as you can see here, and it slides into the jaw like so, and then you put your residential key right in this groove right here. Same applies with the SV-DV adapter for the VATS keys. You just make sure you put it on the right side, and it has a fun tip stop that you use with it as well. And the tip stop just slides into these grooves like so.
Ed, we got a quick question about using a shoulder stop. Could
Yes.
you go over that briefly?
Oh, for sure. I was going to do that later, but that's fine. Our shoulder stop is this magnet that says insert on it. And this is just for the U-jaw with some shoulder keys. How it goes into the U-jaw. So the shoulder stop, if you flip it around, you'll see that it has a lip where the magnets are. That lip goes into a groove right here on the U-jaw. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. So if you grab the shoulder stop, you have the lip go into the groove like so, and then you just slide it over. Let's see, do I have a shoulder key up here that I can show you? Yeah, this will do. And then you just slide the key into the jaw, having that shoulder press against the magnet. I'll try to do this as best I can. There we go. I'll move that over a little bit more. It's hard to do that sideways. There we go. So the shoulder hits that key, or that shoulder. The shoulder of the key hits the shoulder stop, and then you tighten down the U-jaw, and then you remove the shoulder stop, and voila, that's how you put the key into the jaw using a shoulder stop. And just to prove that I'm using a key that has a shoulder, there you go. So, back to, where was I? Back to jaw setup. You just make sure that the jaw is all the way to the left in the carriage. I had too much coffee today. There we go. You can always double check to make sure that it's all the way to the left. If it's all the way to the left and you tighten down the set screw, that should not move. You can also try to shift it forward, backward, left, right. It should be hard as a rock. You don't want anything loose in the machine when you decode or cut. It's not going to cut the keys right. Always make sure everything's tight in there. So now we're going to reinstall our calibration template. And you just push it in as far as it can go until it hits the bumpers in the back. It'll line it up perfectly. Then you close the shield and press U. Now you'll have X, Y, and Z values up in the top left corner. X is forward, backward movement. Forward, backward. Y is left, right movement. And Z is up, down movement. So if you usually have big jumps, you can tell which direction that you're getting the differential calibration. So you make note of the values, 25, negative 144, and 139. I like to write them down. But then all you do is you hit start, and then OK.
Why is it important to make sure it's clean of all the chips?
It's important because our calibration values are calibrated to hundredths of a millimeter. So if there's chips on the jaw, and it hits that chip, it's going to throw everything out of place. So always make sure that, especially when you're calibrating, that you use one of these brushes and brush the heck out of that jaw. You don't want any chips on top of it. We do have a sticker usually in there that says don't use a pressurized air to blow out the chips because the chips will go all over the place. Sometimes they'll stick on the tracer or cutter and you don't want that. If anything, to clean the machine, I would use a shop vac. And you have this tray that comes out in the bottom. And you just shop vac the tray. You can even open the shield and shop vac inside there. Calibration complete. Please press save to apply the new values. Hit OK. And then you look at your X, Y, and Z values. You should have a differential of plus or minus 4. I see that we did have changes here. I remember negative 144 for the Y. It's now negative 30, which is fine. Our X changed also to 20. So we hit save, hit yes, and then we're going to run it one more time. Tracer setup, differential of plus or minus 2. Jaw setup, differential of plus or minus 4. And you are within tolerance of the calibration. Calibration complete. Please press save to apply the new values. You hit OK. Save. Yes. And our values are now within plus or minus 4 of our previous calibrations. So our jaw is now calibrated. So we will take out the calibration template. And just as a good habit to have, I always put it right back in the toolkit. Now our machine is good to use. I'm going to press the home button to go to the main menu. And let's start by decoding a Honda key. Honda keys, as you know, are very finicky. That's why we always test cut Honda keys on our machines before we ship them out. So let's decode this Honda key I have listed right here. It does come with test keys, so in case you ever think that the machine is not calibrated, you can always decode the test keys that are in your toolkit. Do not throw them out. You know who I'm talking about. So go to Vehicles, and then you can go to Honda. I always pick a chord, and then select the master code series in the year range for that vehicle that you're using. You also have emergency options. You got valet, you got general. You just want to make sure that you select the right code series for the vehicle that you're cutting the key for. And then you hit next. Now you're on this key screen. You have decode if you don't know the key, or if you don't know the code for the vehicle that you're cutting, but you do have a key, you can always decode the key. You have code. If you know the code, you can just hit codes and directly type it in. You have direct. You don't you don't know the code, but you know the cuts on the key. You can directly input or change them. And you also got modify. Modify is the big technical one. You can do half cuts, tenth of cuts, hundredth cuts, angles. It's a locksmiths love the modify function, but it's where you get really, really technical. We just have a key and we just want to know what the code is. So we're going to hit decode. It's going to show us exactly where it wants us to put it in the U-jaw. And the cool part about this, the Gymkana, is that it's kind of more of a guideline. This Gymkana is a little people-proof. It will gauge the key before it goes to cut or decode the key. Like a lot of other key machines, you have to have it in the jaw exactly as it shows you on the screen to have precise cuts. This one does not, because it touches the tip and it touches the top, so it knows exactly where that key is. So it can be a little past the line, you can be a little before the line. As long as it's relatively close, you should be good. So you can just eyeball it. And you tighten the key down into the U-jaw. And when you tighten it down, it gets centered. Close the shield and hit next. So as you see here, make sure that you have the right jaw installed. And then when it goes on top, it's just making sure the tracer knob hasn't shifted and that that cutter is not damaged. And then it goes to gauge to see where the key is at relative inside the jaw. And now it measures the cuts. Decode complete, you're going to hit OK, and you'll see a picture of the key with all the cuts measured out. And the main kicker here is you'll have a code box in the top left corner. Make sure that you have a code in the code box. There's going to be a code above like the key code range. And as long as you have a code there, you have properly decoded a key. Now you might ask, well, what if the code doesn't appear in the code box and I've decoded a key and it gives me the cuts? It means that you're dealing with a worn key. So the cuts that it read doesn't match any key in that vehicle series. Usually on Honda keys, I'll just give you a little insider info. If it's a worn key, this bottom cut at the tip will read as a 2 instead of a 1. If that's the case and you don't have it, see, the code disappeared in the code box. You can even hit find codes over here. Code not found. Well, this cut looks a little worn. Let's select that and let's hit a question mark so we don't know what the cut there is. You hit find codes and it'll give us our code, M112. It's a nice feature to have if you're dealing with worn keys, which sometimes you will. You select it and it gives you all the cuts. We also have the star up here. That's how you save a key code series as your favorite. You hit the star, and then you usually name it like most Honda keys or whatever you'd like to name it, or my vehicle key, my truck key, in case you want to come back to it right away. And it'll be at the main menu under favorites, but we're going to hit back. So after we decoded the key, it took us back a couple screens, which is fine. I can show you how to cut by code. So I know the code is M112. I just go to codes, type in M112. You're going to see it went from red to black, which means that it's a value, an actual code. The machine will also tell you if you typed it incorrectly or if that code doesn't exist. It will say that, but then you see here the profile of the key that we had when we decoded it, and then you just hit next. And this is our cut screen. Just some basic information on the cut screen. You have V037, it says the cutter in the bottom left corner of what you should be using. NISI means nickel silver. That's the material of the key. If you want to change the material of the key you're cutting, which is very important, you just select that and it'll change it to steel, brass, aluminum, which I do not recommend cutting on our machines, or any machines in general. Aluminum, the drill bits will spin so fast that it melts the keys on pretty much every machine and it'll snap your cutter. Do not do aluminum keys. And then we're just going to change that right back to nickel silver. We also have the U for U-jaw, the stop area U0, which is always relative. It will gauge the key before it cuts the key. We're going to take our old key. I'm going to put it in a blank. I'm going to have it a little behind the line just so you can see that it doesn't need to be exact. And then you hit cut. So once again, it gauges to make sure that you have the right jaw installed. Make sure that the cutter and tracer are at the right height. Now it's gauging the position of the Honda key. I can't tell if you can pick it up over the mic or not, but Gymkana is a relatively quieter machine compared to our other machines. I know several customers have actually changed this out from their vehicle to their shop just so they can talk on the phone while they're cutting keys. I don't know if you're picking it up over the mic, but that's also one of my big points I like to make on the machine. It's probably really loud because the mic's right by it. All right. Once it's done, it's going to say, please rotate the key by 180 degrees. I'm going to take my brush, first and foremost. I'm going to brush any sort of chips that are on here. Take out the key, get all the chips underneath the key. I'm actually going to push it a little past the line. Make sure it's tight. Everything's tight. Close the shield and press OK. And I'll even tell you to please clean the chips off the jaw as well. And now it's going to gauge the key to see where I put it. Remember, I put it a little past the line instead of behind the line. And now it cuts the second side. All right, and then it tells you cut complete. Please remove the key. So I press OK. Open the shield. Brush the chips away. Remove the key. And just out of habit, I'm going to brush the chips off so I don't have to worry about it later. Little insider scoop on a Honda key. If you look at the tip, it should make a perfect plus symbol. If it doesn't make a perfect plus symbol, you need to calibrate or your tracer's bent. But I can tell right here that that is a 100% perfect plus symbol. Now, let's decode or cut a Toyota key. And I can show you how easy it is where you don't have to change out the cutter or the jaw. Just vehicles. I actually tell you what. I'll go to series, type in the key code series 67118. Toyota is the very first one that pops up. There's the profile of the key I want to cut. Next. Tells me where it would like positioned in the jaw. Put my blank in here. And then hit cut. The same as before, measuring to make sure you got the right jaw, and the tracer knob and the cutter is fine. Now it's gauging the key where it's at. And it cuts the key right away. That's by cutting by code right from the main menu. No changing out jaw, no changing out of the cutter, even though it's we went from a high security key to an edge cut key. Cut complete. Please remove the key. You hit OK. Brush off the chips. There we go. Simple transition from a high security to an edge cut key. Gauges the key. We didn't put it where it wanted us to, and it still gauged it and cut it fine. And that is roughly a quick, basic demonstration of the Gymkana. I guess we'll now open it up to questions if there are any.
I think we've answered the questions we have now, so we'll give it a few minutes and see. So one person asked if we can show them how to engrave. So can you go over what their option would be for engraving?
Engraving keys, yeah, engraving keys you cannot currently do on the Gymkana. You can, however, engrave keys on the Ninja Total, which we'll probably have a video on in the next couple months or so. So stay tuned for that one. We can even add engraving into it if someone wants to see it. So
Absolutely.
We'll absolutely include that. Ninja Total is a I love the Ninja Total. It's basically a key machine that has all the bells and whistles. So it does engraving, it does timple, it does tubular. If there's a key out there, it can probably do it on the Ninja Total. while I wait for people to answer questions, I'm going to clean this up. The OCD in me wants to clean these chips out.
So do you have any tips for anyone that is having a hard time tracing older style keys?
Yes, tracing older style, like are we talking about like Warren Automotive?
They didn't specify, but I would think so.
Okay, so like I showed you before, I'll get back to that screen. Because you can do Warren keys on the machine. Your number one thing you want to check though is to make sure that you get a code. Okay, so let me get to a screen. Let's just do this. Okay, so you have your key here, or you decoded your key. I'm going to change this one to a 2. And you can see, mostly you'll see this with these high security Honda keys. That's kind of the big one that everyone runs into problems with. But when you decode the key in the code box, you will not have a code above the key code range. That means that the cuts that it read does not match anything in the series. So what you can do is you can take the key out of the machine. That takes a little bit of detective work. I like to eyeball it and see. You can usually tell what part of the key is worn. And 9 times out of 10 with those Honda keys, it's this bottom tip right there. It will read as a 2 instead of the 1. So if you know that, you can always change it to a 1. Or if you don't know that because you know nothing about keys or anything like that, you can always change it to the question mark at the bottom here, which means I don't know what that cut is. I can tell that cut is worn though. That's what it tells the machine. And then you have a button over here that says Find Codes. You click Find Codes, and it'll pull up a list of the key codes. There's only one there. Here, let me back up. Let me do some more question marks. Let's say it's a really worn key. Find Codes. It'll give you a list of the key codes that match all the other cuts that we know are correct. And then you just select one, you hit Next. It'll pull up that key code right up there. And if you ever think that the machine is out of calibration, you can always decode the test key that's in your toolkit. And you can always decode a key that you just cut and make sure that it gives you the right code, just in case you think that it didn't cut right. It's always a good way to tell.
All right. Can you maybe review some of the common error codes people may get and how they push through those?
Cool. All right, so common error codes that you get. The main one, invalid jaw, when you have the proper jaw installed. That means that the tracer's either touching or not touching the jaw where it's supposed to. Doing a calibration should fix your issue. I like to do a full calibration because that way I know 100% in my head that the machine is calibrated. You can usually sometimes get away with just doing a jaw setup. Please lift tracer, lower tracer. If you keep getting that error message when you go to cut or decode keys, it means that this tracer knob is shifted, and I want to make sure that it's at the right height, and you just need to do a tracer adjustment to fix that issue. Also, a calibration will fix that issue. Please reposition key in the jaw. That means that the key is so far back in the jaw, the cutter won't reach the very back cuts of the key, so it wants you to push the key further into the jaw. I think there's newer Chevy keys where they're actually really long, and it looks like on the screen, like it looks like it should be at U0, but if you look closely, the key's supposed to be past U0. I can't remember specifically what key it is, but if it ever gives you that error message, it just means that it wants the key further into the jaw, and when you do that, it should cut or decode the key properly. Trying to think of some other ones. Here's another one. Subscription expires in a month or been 2 years since you upgraded machine. If you ever get a subscription will expire soon, it just means that your subscription for updates is running out. What I would do in that situation is I would update your machine so you're at the newest version of software. That way you can hold off on updating unless you absolutely have to. It doesn't mean you have to purchase a subscription right away. It just means that, hey, if you want to update, you probably should do it sooner than later. because your subscription's about to run out. I'm trying to think of some other error messages that I get off the top of my head. Error 80 while updating means that just doesn't like what's on your USB drive. It's a generic error message. Usually you just have to double check to make sure that the update is actually physically on the USB drive, but we'll cover that in another video. But the big ones usually are invalid jaw. When you have the jaw installed, it means that the tracer's either touching or not touching the jaw where it's supposed to. Please lift tracer, please lower tracer error messages means that that tracer knob is shifted. It'll ship over time, but that's why we have that sticker that says don't touch, so you shouldn't have to. But if it does, don't worry about it. A calibration should fix it. And reposition the key. Those are the top three user ones that I see all the time.
All right, and as our tech support guru, are there any common questions that you get very often that you'd like to review? Or do you think you've already gone through those?
Well, I definitely did the calibration one, which that's why it comes with a quick start guide. It should show you picture by picture how to calibrate the machine. We also have videos at keylineacademy.com in case you want to see another video. We also will have this one somewhere in case you want to rewatch it or show employees using the machine. You can do it via that on YouTube. So we have two different areas that you can go find it. 9 times out of 10, if you have a question, you could probably find it real quick in the quick start guide. If I am swamped with calls, always leave a voicemail because I will immediately call you back when I can, or I'm at lunch or in a meeting. But if you leave a voicemail, I return every voicemail. If you leave it that day before 5 p.m., I will call you back. East Coast time. Activation pin, once again, started the video. To get the activation pin when you first get the machine, you have to register the touchscreen serial number. There are 2 serial numbers that come with the Gymkana, one on the touchscreen and one on the machine itself. You're technically supposed to do both, but the touchscreen is what gives you the activation pin. It's located on the back, not the bottom, the back. And if you have it attached to the bracket, you have to take it off the bracket, or it's on the front of the box, or it's on the setup sheet that came with the machine, or you can go to Setup, Utility, scroll right, and Machine Data. It'll give you both serial numbers listed there. But you can't get to that until you use the activation pin. So you gotta use the first 3. But there's another way to look that up. Any other ones?
I think those are all the questions we have for today.
Oh, cool. Okay then. Once again, if you have trouble or need some more further guidance, you can always call our tech support number, 1-800-891-2118. Email us, and we will be able to assist you usually that day. And yeah, hope you enjoy the machine. Hope to see y'all again on our future videos and demonstrations. We are doing a software update one. We'll do a Ninja Total one. We'll make sure to add engraving into it. Yeah, and we'll go from there. If you have any suggestions or want to see other machines, please feel free to email us through keyline-usa.com, and we will do those demonstrations as well.